Hello and welcome to a very special edition of Talking Honey, where we are celebrating Queen Elizabeth in the year of Her Majesty's historic Platinum Jubilee. I'm Shelley Horton and with me is Victoria Arbiter, who spent her teenage years living inside Kensington Palace, former Editor-in-Chief of the Australian Women's Weekly, Deborah Thomas, and 9Honey's royal reporter, Natalie Oliveri. Hello.
Hi.
Hello. So, the Queen, duty always came first. A lifetime of obligation bound by a strict and very busy royal calendar. She's also a mother of four, but her dedication to the crown meant long periods away, with Prince Charles claiming his childhood was unhappy. However, as a grandmother, Elizabeth has shown great affection to her grandchildren. Deb, let's go to you first. Princess Elizabeth had Prince Charles and Princess Anne before she became Queen. What was their family life like in that period?
Probably very different to when she became Queen. So Charles was 4 at the coronation and Anne was 2. So a very, very different life. She went from being essentially a monarch in training, who probably had a lot of time to spend with her children, to being a hard-working mum who, as you say, for many days or weeks, had to leave her children behind. But it was also very different because as a royal family, obviously the children had plenty of nannies. There was a big support system around them as a family. When she was a princess, obviously escalated when she was Queen.
So, when she became Queen, how did things change?
Well, certainly I think outward appearances, everyone looked very content, but as Deb said, the schedule was insane and it was gruelling, and of course the Queen assumed the throne during what was largely a male-dominated period, and so suddenly there was this very young woman who had to prove herself. All her government ministers were men and dubious as to whether or not she'd be able to do the job, and so she needed to prove herself. She was also very committed to her role, wanted to make her father proud, so she was often only able to spend around half an hour in the morning with her children before dashing off for the day's engagements. She'd rush home in time to do bath time and bedtime before it all started again the very next day. And as you mentioned, Prince Charles has talked about how sad his childhood was, and he said it was really only comforted by the presence of Mabel Anderson, who was his favourite nanny. His mother was duty-bound. I think he understands it now, having raised children himself and the pressures that he experienced. But I think, you know, the Queen tried very hard to find a balance, but of course it was duty first.
So, Natalie, what do you think about this? So, since she became Queen, obviously incredibly busy, but an unhappy childhood?
It's funny because childhood family movies were released by the palace, and these show Prince Philip playing with his children. At the beach, you have the royals rolling down this hill, and even Prince Harry and William have commented, like, our family likes to roll around a lot. But it's really lovely to see these royals just acting like normal people and pushing around a pram, driving in toy cars. So it's very much a normal family. But yeah, look, Prince Charles didn't have his mother there all the time, and he had to rely on his nannies to mother him. But Philip was very much a dad in control. He was the patriarch of the family and tried to fill in where he could. You know, he was the boss at home, essentially.
You make a really good point there, Natalie, because that's when we first saw the footage of the family behaving as a family. Now, that was a first time for everybody to see that of the royal family. And compared to their predecessors, that was a whole new way of being. So at that time, it was like, wow, they're just like any other family, and that's what they set out to do. But very unusual and very forward-thinking for the 1950s and late 1940s.
And also, Elizabeth was the first reigning monarch since Queen Victoria to give birth while she was on the throne. So first to Prince Andrew in 1960, then to Prince Edward in 1964. Now, by this stage, expectations and attitudes to royalty had changed. What do you guys think about that? Did people want more mothering? What were their expectations?
Look, I think I have to put this out there because I feel very strongly about this as a mother. You know, expectations change, attitudes towards royalty change. And you mentioned earlier, Deb, and you were spot on, that Diana is kind of held up as the best royal mother ever. She would grab her children in huge bear hugs. When you compare sort of in 1951, when the Queen returned from Canada, Charles barely recognised her when he went to the station, whereas you cut to to 1991, and Charles and Diana are in Canada, and there's that beautiful footage of them running up the gangplank to Britannia, and there's huge big hugs for William and Harry. But I think aside from expectations changing, attitudes changing, the Queen was the Queen, and there was a certain level of dignity expected of one in her position. Diana, popular as she was a princess. She wasn't the Queen. Also, changes in aviation. You know, when the Queen went away in 1953, 54, she was gone for 6 months, and she left her children at home. But when Diana brought William to Australia in 1983, he was 9 months old, but you could fly to Australia relatively quickly, not even
no stops required.
Exactly. So I think it's unfair to kind of compare across the generational divide, just given all the elements that there are to factor in.
She broke new ground. She was a queen who was pregnant. She couldn't go and hide away, like they did in the old days. She had jobs. She had a job to do, and she had to get out and do that. And this was a time even for everyday women who, if you're pregnant, you make sure you cover it up, and you don't have your photo taken necessarily. You're not on TV even in the 70s or 80s. All that sort of stuff. And she just got on with it and completely changed the way that pregnant women, and again, really, she was in many ways, she was I guess, a groundbreaker for women. Even today, that she worked and did that job. She was raising 4 children. She was pregnant during probably what was one of the most difficult jobs, as you say, with all of the men probably having a whole lot of comments behind her back to make. And she changed the way that people thought of women having babies and what they could do at the same time.
What I loved about the Queen, though, she brought her children along to some of the engagements where appropriate. I mean, we've seen Trooping the Colour when she had her baby in her arms, and I mean, that's just incredible. And she certainly took a different approach to Prince Andrew and Prince Edward than Charles and Anne, because she had settled into her role as Queen. So she was much more confident, both as a mother, but also as a monarch.
And yet again, we just find that mothers can't ever get it right. Everyone's going to have an opinion and a criticism.
Even when you're the Queen.
Exactly. In celebration of the Queen's 90th, Her Majesty sat down with Prince Charles to watch family movies, giving a rare look into their special relationship. And if you listen closely, Princess Anne chimes in. Have a look.
This is Andrew and Edward. Do you think that's at Frogmore, is it all?
No, I think it's in the garden in London.
London.
Because we were...
Yes.
That's rather good, that.
Isn't it?
We were allowed to rake the leaves and put them in the...
Frequently, your relationship with your mother is a different one. Quite often until you get married, I suspect, and have children, when that relationship with your mother changes a bit, and it can become much closer, because of that's the first time you really understand what mothers have been doing.
What mothers have been doing, exactly. So, Nat, I mean, we've seen that as her children got older, they kind of reflected a little differently. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really nice to see Princess Anne there speaking about her mother. They are clearly very, very close. And Princess Anne looks so much like her mother as well. But look, I think over time, the relationship with the Queen and her children changed, particularly when the Queen's children's marriages started to unravel, right? And this happened in 1992. We saw Princess Anne's marriage break down, then Charles and Diana, and then also Prince Andrew and the Duchess of York. And this left the Queen incredibly distressed, and it would have led to a lot of tension with Her Majesty and her children, because she didn't want their marriages to break down. She had seen what had happened with her own sister, Princess Margaret, and how hard that had been. So I think that would have been incredibly trying for the Queen and Prince Philip to have to be parents still to their children who are going through such tough situations.
Absolutely.
We also saw in the footage there the Queen Mother. And the Queen Mother was, I think, a very good mother to her daughters, particularly, given the constraints of that time. And Charles was very, very close to the Queen Mother. So I think that potentially, while Queen Elizabeth was away, the Queen Mother stepped in and really kind of formed a very, very close bond with Charles. And that lasted a lifetime. So family is more than just a mother, daughter,
takes a
mother,
village.
son. It takes a village, exactly.
Absolutely.
There were other members of the family that were very close, indeed.
Victoria, let's move on and talk about the Diana years, because during the years of Princess of Wales, she was so praised for being affectionate, and her approach seemed so different to the Queen's. But again, we come back, are we comparing apples and oranges?
I think we are a little, because of course Diana was a whole new generation, and it's interesting because Diana had come from a very sad, lonely childhood herself, and so for her, she was perhaps trying to fix the wrongs of her own parents. She was going to make sure that her children felt loved within an inch of their life. Everything was hugs, but that's how she conducted her public role as well. She was very touchy-feely. The Queen is a different person, you know, we're all going to mother differently. The Queen was a product of her era, but she had actually enjoyed a very happy childhood. Frolicking around with her parents at home. Apparently, Marion Crawford, who was the Queen's governess, said there was great hilarity around her house when she was growing up. So I think Diana has certainly paved the way for future generations. You know, children, royal children, no longer just sequestered in the nursery and seen at supper time. They're involved a lot more, and I think they've allowed, her approach has allowed William and Kate to involve their children in a much more public fashion. But I think that's to be expected. Each generation is going to bring what modern society reflects.
Now, I'm going to touch on a bit of a tricky subject right now. The Queen surprised many by allowing Prince Andrew to take such a prominent role at Prince Philip's memorial service. So, I'm going to put it to you, Victoria.
Okay, bring it on.
Is this a case of the Queen being a mother first versus a Queen first?
Here's the thing with Prince Andrew. We all struggle with him, to put it politely, and understandably so. He has shown appalling error in judgment. He's not a particularly nice man, that is my opinion. He's shown no compassion, no empathy, no sign of remorse. So is this public backlash against him justified? Yes, absolutely. Having said that, he has never been charged, investigated or convicted in any capacity. So
we're going to disagree.
I know. So him going to that memorial, though, I think he had every right to be at that memorial. It was his father.
Yes.
The Queen walking him in, or walking in with him, I see the controversy, I do. But the other side of that would have been, had he come in the front doors, past the press, he'd have had to walk the entire length of the aisle with the cameras on him. He'd have been greeted by the clergy. Was there a happy medium? Yes, we could have snuck Prince Andrew in, probably privately, seeing him on the Queen's arm. I understand why that outraged people, particularly victims of sexual assault and sexual trafficking. I get it. But I think the Queen was saying, I have done my duty, I have stripped him of every privilege, royal privilege known to man short of breathing, but I'm not going to denounce him as my son.
He's grieving.
My son.
What do you think, Deb?
I think the Queen has done an amazing job, 99.9% of her reign. But there have been some errors of judgment, and this was one. And I wonder whether she she misread the gravitas of the situation that Andrew was in. Yes, he hadn't been charged, and maybe that was part of it. And perhaps, you know, it was a mother's love clouding a decision. That's how I see it.
And do you think this sort of support that the Queen has showed could actually pave the way for him to get some of his privileges back?
I think he's delusional if he thinks he's going to get a royal role again, Shelley. I think Prince Harry made a lot of people question something he said recently in an interview, and Harry said that when he visited the Queen at Windsor Castle recently, he wanted to make sure the Queen was protected and that she had the right people around her. Now, this is what Harry said.
Yes.
Now, was he referring to his uncle, Prince Andrew? Because there are a lot of rumours that Prince Andrew has the Queen's ear. He lives just down the road from Windsor Castle. So is he going into the Queen's house and trying to take the role of his father now that Prince Philip isn't there to be the Queen's confidant? So I think Harry certainly did raise a lot of eyebrows with that comment.
Maybe Harry's using the technique of the Queen of saying something without actually saying it.
I have to say, the Queen did face a lot of criticism for not stripping Prince Andrew of everything because, you know, back in 2019, November, that's when he stepped back from royal duties, but it took until January 2021 for the Duke of York to be removed of many of his military titles and positions. He can't use His Royal Highness anymore, but he still has the Duke of York title. And many people look at the Queen and say, why not get rid of it all? I mean, you're the boss here.
But it's tricky, though, too, because look, I can't bear Prince Andrew. I've never liked him. My dad worked at Buckingham Palace and he's very, very private. He doesn't give anything away. He's never discussed any of them privately. But Andrew is not a nice man. He's not. But at the same time, when you just strip him of everything, that's kind of admitting to guilt, perhaps. And so I think, you know, sort of advisors, you're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place, because you strip him of everything, that's saying he's guilty, but you don't strip him of everything, and then the public are justifiably going to be upset.
Yeah.
Because, you know, everybody, he's been judged in the court of public opinion, and the court of public opinion has said he has no place ever on the public stage, and I don't think he'll be back. But I think...
Do you think that's why he didn't go to court? Do you think that's why he settled?
Oh, that's a whole other show. But
That's another show, yeah.
He may be going to his mother. They say he was... or is her favourite, or was her favourite, and he's arrogant enough to think that he could be reinstated.
That
it's done and dusted. I mean, we saw him.
Yeah.
He just doesn't get it.
Yeah.
And he's coming from an incredible position of privilege, and he probably thinks, hey, it's done and dusted now. In a year's time, maybe Mummy might restore something.
Oh, we could talk about this for another entire episode. But I have to wrap it up there. Thank you so much for offering your expert opinion. So everyone, please thank Victoria, Deborah and Natalie. And if you would like some more royal news, please go to 9honey.com.au.